Scott, about this tall, right? Yeah. No, well, I was told it was a TED Talk. So first thing you had to do is not put a tie on. Sorry, Jen. What a privilege it is to be here with such an esteemed panel, and a privilege to be able to speak to all of you here tonight. Being the twin son of a different mother than my brother, I said, I know you wanted a verse of Torah, but I am the director of the Anti-Defamation League. I've got to go with Pirkei Avot. And Pirkei Avot 1:14, of course, is, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? Because that really speaks to the work that I do every day. And my good friend, the associate director of the ADL, sitting there, Sue Parker-Gerson. So I want to take these in order because I think that they're very important, not only for us to look at individually ourselves, but also as a Jewish community. And let's look at the first question. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And one thing I think you've got to do is recognize, where are we as Jews in the world today? And thankfully, about 3 weeks ago, after spending $7.5 million, the ADL did a survey of the world to find out what it felt about Jews. And what we did is we surveyed 86% of the entire population of the world to find out what they thought about the Jewish people. That's all the countries, the light-colored ones, everywhere except for Central Africa and part of Asia that's there. They were asked 11 questions. These are the same 11 questions that the ADL has been asking Americans since the mid-1960s, but now we ask the world. And you'll see up there a number of different questions that are all the canards and stereotypes that you hear about, like whether or not Jews are more loyal to the state of Israel than they are to their own country, whether they have too much control in finance or the media, those type of things. If a person answered 6 or more of these questions in the affirmative as being probably true, then they were thought to have anti-Semitic attitudes. And what we found was 26% of the world, 1.9 million people, harbor anti-Semitic attitudes. And it depended where in the world you were. In the Middle East and North Africa, it's higher. In English-speaking countries where we live, thank goodness, it's much lower. But some of the major findings, I think, will curl your hair a little bit. And 41% of the people in the world thought that Jews were more loyal to the state of Israel than they were to their own countries. And if you think about how that canard is used and has historically been used against the Jewish people, it's very, very difficult. 35% said that Jews have too much power in the world. What's interesting is the Holocaust, one of the major pivotal events in some people's lifetimes that are here, but certainly in the past century, if not in centuries, is that 54% of the people have heard of it, but only 33% think that what they've heard was true. So we have 32% of the people believing the way that history is recording the Holocaust is a myth. It's not true. And of course, what's unfortunate is if you go into the Middle East and North Africa, into that area, it's about twice as many don't believe or profess to believe that the Holocaust is the way history is doing it. This one blew my mind. 74% of the people who've never met a Jew, 25% of them harbor anti-Semitic beliefs. Or another way of saying this, 26% of those people who believe a majority of the anti-Semitic stereotypes tested to be probably true, 70% of them have never actually met a Jewish person. So you don't need to meet a Jew to harbor this disease of anti-Semitism that exists out there. The wonderful thing is, I will tell you, in the United States, where ADL has been polling since the mid-60s, we're down to 9% of the people. That's 9% that answered 6 or more of those questions as probably true, having anti-Semitic beliefs. 9% is a really nice figure until you realize how large our country is. That's still 21 million people. I will tell you, though, that 10% of the population probably thinks the world is flat also, so you can't worry about it. But the interesting thing here is you remember those 11 questions that are there, you had to answer 6 of them as saying it was probably true. So if you answered 5, that you thought Jews controlled the world or had too much money or controlled media or something, you're not deemed to be having anti-Semitic attitudes. I had the opportunity to ask Abe Foxman, the national director of the ADL, why did they do that? Why did you make such a high standard? He said, because if we lowered it to something that was reasonable, the number would be so high, nobody would believe it. So yeah, a couple of things, though, that I do want to point out, I'm sorry, before I leave that, is even though only 9% of the country believes and has these anti-Semitic attitudes, 31% of Americans believe that we're more loyal to Israel than we are to the United States. 18% believe that Jews have too much power in the business world. 22% believe we talk too much about the Holocaust. So if you're not for yourself, who's going to be? With those kind of numbers, you need to think about that. So next I want to look at, though, if I'm only for myself, what am I? And this is what we do. You might have read in the paper a few weeks ago in Northwest Denver, terrible signs were posted around that said white power and telling, get rid of poor Hispanics. That's the kind of thing that we as a Jewish community need to speak out against. When things happen even in the Islam, to our Muslim brothers and sisters that live in this community, there were bus ads that were up a couple of years ago that referred to 19,757 people, where they got that number, have been killed since 9/11, and then it says, and I know it's hard to read, it's not Islamophobia, it's Islamorealism, which to me is sort of like, I'm not a racist, but kind of thing. We thought it important to speak out against it, and I'm glad to say we were able to bring together a rabbi, who's sitting right there, a minister, and an imam, because we don't debate on the side of a bus whether or not that's real numbers, or whether it's a real thought. So you can't see it, but behind Rabbi Black's head it says, love thy neighbor. And that was the bus ad that was put up to counter that. We also speak on marriage equality and how important that is. And as a community, how nice it was for me to find one day in my box this picture up there, and I'm on the bottom row of the tic-tac-toe next to Rabbi Foster and Senator Joyce Foster. As a community, it's important for us to speak out for others. And then finally, you might have heard about what went on in the Whittier neighborhood. Whittier is just west of Manual High School, north of 5 Points area. There were letters put on people's front porch using the N-word. It basically told African Americans they needed to get back to the ghetto. But then again, it does come to us, because then the letter ends that there are too many blacks or Jews in the area. How the Jews got into the mix, I'm not quite sure. But in Martin Luther King's letter from the Birmingham jail, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So we really do need to look beyond ourselves. And so that brings me then to the final question. If not now, when? And to me, I don't know if you know who that is. That's that Pastor Martin Niemöller. And you know the famous poem that he did, that first they came for the socialists, they came for the trade unionists, then they came for the Jews, but I didn't speak out against them. And I have a picture of the gates of Dachau, because that's where Martin Niemöller ended. And of course, the end of his statement is, then they came for me and there was nobody left to speak for me. And the other part I think about doing it now is I think about another part of the Pirkei Avot. The sword comes into the world because of justice delayed and justice denied. And to some people, Hillel is their great rabbi, their great teacher, but I think there's another great rabbi or great teacher who said justice too long delayed is justice denied. And of course, that was Martin Luther King Jr., and I had to find a picture of where he's walking with Heschel and the rest of with a Torah as he's doing it. So for us in the Anti-Defamation League, we've had the same mission before the Holocaust existed, before we had the tumult of today. For 101 years, it's been our mission to stop the defamation of the Jewish people, to stop anti-Semitism, and to secure justice and fair treatment to all. And to me, that's really the corollary expression to this entire thing of, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? If not now, when?